Well, welcome back everybody to the 1860 Club. We have today Greg Hobba, one of the famous names around Preston, Premiership captain, a stalwart at the club over two separate periods of 5 years each. So he had 10 years in between. He managed to play 200 games with both Northcote and North Melbourne. Welcome, Greg.
Welcome, Lee. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to see you, and you look very relaxed there.
Oh, yes. No, thoroughly enjoying lifestyle up in Kilmore, and no, very relaxed at the moment. There we are. But it's an honour to be here and to have a chat to you.
Well, your cricket career is a long one, and I'd be curious to find out, how did you actually get down to Premier cricket?
Right. It was a while ago. So, no, I had just played a Hatch Shield with Ivanhoe. So I was a younger age there, and I had quite a good year. And I was fortunate enough to receive an invitation by Northcote to go down and for a hit down there, junior development and so forth. And I was fortunate when I went down, Northcote had 5 sides. So they had the 4 in the Premier or district level, and pretty sure they had the 5th side in the Metropolitan that stage. So went down, and I was fortunate enough to hit a couple of games in the 4th. I went on from there. So that was in 75. When I first started at Northcote, the likes of Richie Robinson, and my first captain was Gary Cozy.
Right.
So I had Coase, Brendan McArdle, who was a great district player, Julian Weiner, then Rodney Hogg. And to play against, I was fortunate where I played juniors, combined juniors with, Dean Jones, Merv, O'Donnell. So we were in that group. When I was in the State squad for 2 years with those fellas, and, I rolled up to state training, and here's Max Walker walking out to have a bowl. He's my idol.
Yeah.
So this is where it was interesting. But to play against so many quality and good players, Siddons never played a test. Probably the best player I've seen not to play a test match. He was just a phenomenal player, great player to watch. So, and Andrew Wildsmith, he was an outstanding player to play with and against. Just a typical left-hander. The elegance was just enormous.
What was your highlight at Northcote?
The highlight obviously was the 86-87 Premiership, where we came from nowhere to end up winning the Premiership at Northcote. Julian Weiner had been coach for 2 years. Great technicianist. We had a good side. We had a good 11, or at that stage I'd say it was 13 that played throughout the whole year. So we had 13 players, and from Julian Weiner, Ian Kellan, fast bowler. And then after that, we had no outstanding players. Well, Andrew Wildsmith, I must point, Andrew was an outstanding player, but no real state test players. Were all good to average Premier cricket players, but there was 11 of us. At any one stage, somebody put their hand up and they could win a game for you. We played St Kilda. They were undefeated, and in those days, you'd play at the reverse ground where you played the home and away. So St Kilda ended up on top. We were 4th, but they had to play at our home ground at Westgarth Street, which they didn't like. So wicket was up and down, and we struggled to get about 140, 150, and they were lucky to get 120. From there we played Collingwood, and it's a similar thing. Well, didn't have a chance, and we batted first, and we made 160 and got them all out for about 150. So that was good. That was a highlight, I guess. Playing your first game of Premier cricket as well. That's always a standout. And just playing with and playing for, playing with and playing against outstanding players.
It was a good era for Victorian cricket as well.
Well, it was. And the the rewarding thing was that they did play quite a few games for their clubs as well.
Yes. Yes, it was a different time, wasn't it?
It was a different era where they weren't rested and so forth. If they were playing, and they did play for the clubs. That's right. So you play with against quite a few very experienced players.
So in about 91, you got lured to Preston. How did that come about?
I did. Well, 1991, we had Rodney Hobba as coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I was his deputy. Rodney and I probably butted heads a few times. He would prefer to have 11 bowlers playing in the side. I would have probably a regular 8 bats, 3 bowlers, fast bowlers. But yeah, so we butted heads a fair bit. He was quite injured. I captained a fair bit of that year. And then out of the blue, I got a phone call from Richard Norris.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a meeting. Then I had another phone call from an Ivanhoe club. So someone from Ivanhoe. So it was with Ivanhoe and Preston to whether I'd move to sub-district cricket. And Ivanhoe had 13 of their probably senior players I played with or against. Ivanhoe was generally where a lot of Northcote players had come from, so they'd gone back. Where Preston, I had Richard was outstanding when he discussed a few things with me. I knew Ronnie Brents from Northcote and Wayne Robinson,
mm-hmm.
Groucho.
Yeah.
So on reflection, I thought I could teach people that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And bring my method of the game to players that haven't played under me or played with me.
What was your approach to the captaincy?
Well, the coach, it was interesting. I hadn't seen a great deal of sub-district cricket.
Mm-hmm.
So I was learning what the game was all about in sub-district as well. Yeah, and that's where Wayne Robinson was a backbone in the first year I was there. And my captaincy, I was probably a more relaxed captain than a lot of the players had at Preston. I know Neil could be fairly stern and so forth, where I try to give the player his own space and where he could do things on the field that he wanted to. So I gave a lot of rope. I was more relaxed. Probably the bowlers had a greater say on what they wanted. And the one thing that I learned early was the enjoyment. We all play the game to enjoy it. And a lot of times when you start playing high levels, then if you don't have success or personally, then it can get a difficult game. Can really get a difficult game. So my approach was probably a bit more relaxed than others, and gave players their own accord where they could do a lot of things that they wanted to do, apart from the captain saying, "This is what you have to do."
Take responsibility.
Yeah. So, and the beauty about that, they'd know that if I said, "Well, you've had enough, see you later," they generally agreed with me. So that was a plus.
So you came to Preston, and we had a pretty good side, and the seconds were also pretty strong through that period. And then you built on that side with a couple of good recruits who sort of came through, and some young guys, a mix of some very talented young guys. The team just went from strength to strength, and you seem to have a very strong belief in what you were doing.
We did. As I said, when I started to realise what sub-district cricket was all about, and you have a look at every side, and we're fortunate where we had the likes of Ravi, Rohan in the early piece, Suramana. All sides had 2 or 3 quality players, and I thought what we needed, if we could find 2 or 3 quality players, we needed an overall 11, 12, 13 players that could play the game and play the game well. What we needed was to get a core group that believed in themselves. And that's so important when I stem back to having fun. And it's having belief as well.
Yes.
All to play that level, they've made 100 somewhere else. They've taken 4 or 5 wickets. And that's what they have to fall back on when they're struggling. The good times and the successful times. And then they can bring that into the game when they are finding it a bit tough. So we had to find that if we had 11 players and 11 quality players, then, it would be difficult to lose. And that's how we found that as well. And the other thing was for each player to play for themselves and play for each other. If they could sit next to each other after a game and after a hard game and were lost, and they could sit and turn to each other and say, well, I've given 100%. And then they can't give any more.
Can't ask for more than that. You won the championship in your first year.
Yeah, we did, which was interesting because we played Ivanhoe in the grand final. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was a benefit to myself because I had played with 9 of the 11 at one time or another at Northcote, and the other 2 I'd played against. And so I knew the whole team. I had the benefit of knowing how Andrew Wildsmith could play. And you speak about belief, and we scored 200, 204. Everybody said it wasn't enough. And we went out in a tee, and I think they were only 2 down, so they're travelling pretty well. And I'd only bowled Dale Carpenter for about 4 or 5 overs. The Preston deck was pretty flat. So Chipper only got about 4 overs. I took him off. He came to a tee and he said, I'll get him out. Put me on and I'll get him out. Mm-hmm. So I put him straight on after tea. And we worked hard on consolidating Andrew Wildsmith. And sure enough, he went straight up in the air and caught. Chipper got him out. It was perfect. Real, and that's where the belief comes into it. It was just terrific. And from there, a perfect example was we really pressured Ivanhoe. They were struggling to score runs. And at the end of the day, they lost by about 4 or 5 runs at the end. Mm. And then and then I think we went to playing Boxhill, wasn't it, in the championship?
Yep.
And that was Ian Callan, who I'd played against, or played with, sorry.
Yep.
And and that game again, we played very well at Ravi, extremely played well, and we had played Phil Jobling in that year. He got a nod. We had 12, 13 players that were knocking on the door. Wayne McLaughlin, Gus, and Phil Jobling, I think, and Phil got the nod. And he got a 20 in the championship partnership with Ravi for 50-odd runs that took us to that level. So, and that was great. It was just terrific to come to the club at first year and win a championship. It was pretty special.
You had a very good team, some wonderful players through there. You mentioned Chip, who gave 110%.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yes. Oh, yeah, he was. And again, we were talking earlier, a sort of player that, he could put the ball on a 10-cent bit, which was terrific. And, he and his dedication and the spirit on the ground was just enormous. Mm. Fine player.
And you had Rowan, who has been described by Dick as the best batter he's seen at the club in his 70 years.
Yes, yeah. Oh, look, you have a look at Rowan. He was just a superb player. Superb player, would rarely let you down. And he and Ravi were on the ground. If things weren't going right, they'd pop their heads up and have a chat and would think about it. And often I'd go with their advice and so forth. They're just brilliant. Always approachable, and that's the key to it. If the captain's always approachable, anybody can come to you when they've got an idea, and they were. And Rohan and Ravi were no exception.
Yeah.
And their knowledge of the game was brilliant.